couple pieces of paper here. We've been very busy since filing deadline, which the final filing deadline for local elections was the 25th of July. And so we at Oakland County went through all of the filed candidates, and we took measure of who was running and where they're running from and where we have open seats, and then we compared the candidates to the van. And a lot of people are still undefined in van, so we have a lot of work to do. But in Auburn Hills, we have 3 open seats, which means there's only one Dem running, there's only one incumbent running, and it's the Dem, Henry Knight, so we're very excited about that. There's 2 other candidates that are listed as independent in the van, but they need a write-in candidate. So I don't know if any of you live in Auburn Hills or know of anybody in Auburn Hills, but we need to run a write-in candidate in Auburn Hills. So just want to point that out. In Bloomfield Hills, there are 4 incumbents running, and they're running unopposed, but there is an open seat left, and we need a write-in in Bloomfield Hills. So if you know any Democrats who would be willing to run as a write-in and serve on the Bloomfield Hills Council, we would love to help you there. I know this is shocking, isn't it? Okay. There was a suggestion to call Charles Gaba. That would be great. In Clawson, we have an open seat, and we have some Dems running there. In Hazel Park, we have some Dems running. In Lake Angeles. Does anybody know anybody who lives in Lake Angeles? Lake Angeles has 2 open seats and nobody's running. So if you're interested in having Dems elected in Lake Angeles that can endorse candidates that run for higher office, that have an honorable behind their title, this would be the time to find a friend in Lake Angeles who's a strong Dem. Let us know who they are, because we need 2 of them, and we will go out there and help. We also have a similar problem in South Lyon. Yeah. South Lyon has nobody filed for mayor. Hey, in Lake Angeles, they have nobody filed for anything, okay? So the Republicans are really doing a bang-up job in Lake Angeles and South Lyon, and nobody wants to work with them. So we need 2 candidates in Lake Angeles, and we need a mayoral candidate in South Lyon. And I will tell you, we've been racking our brain to try to find somebody, and Amanda and I were pouring through the Oakland County Democratic Party members in South Lyon, who come up as strong Dems too. And we found Agnes. And Agnes is no spring chicken. So we need somebody other than Agnes to run. So I'm just giving you the highlights here. And so we're very excited about our opportunities to take some very interesting seats in the local races. We also have some candidates running where they can win if we get behind them and help them, because while there may be incumbents running, we have some strong Dems that need to take out some of those awful Republicans, and we can do it. And I want to remind you why it's important to have candidates elected at the local level. First of all, local level is where you learn your skills to run for office. It allows you to go door to door, to hone your message, to learn about budgeting, and all of the things necessary to be a great elected official. Number 2, the people who love the government best is the government that is closest to them. And it is always fun to be a politician that is loved by your constituents. So in local government, you don't have to have committee meetings to figure out if you're going to fill a pothole or not. You can usually call up your city manager or your mayor and say, we need to fill this pothole, and it's done within a few hours, and they make you look like a brilliant genius and a real efficient person. But more importantly, it forms the backbone of a deep bench of Democratic winners who we can go to move up the scale to run for higher office, that already have a built-in base, a relationship with the press. And finally, at the local level, this is where you declare cities immigrant-friendly. This is where you preserve union contracts in bidding for your residents. This is where you get to do the work every day to pass a human rights ordinance, to do the things that make your city green, that make it better, and really get the job done and can echo that message up through the chain. So if you are interested, we would love to help you. And so for those of you, who's here that's running already as a candidate to file? Okay, we have great people. You're running for local office in Troy. So we've got some candidates running in Troy, in Rochester, and Rochester Hills. We need some in, of course, Lake Angeles, 2 write-ins, and 1 for mayor in Southline. So we did all of this. We'll be calling through the local candidates soon to meet with each of them, to talk about what they need, meet with their local clubs to get everybody on board, and hopefully win some great elections in November of 17. It would be really terrific if we do that. The Republicans use their local elected officials in their farm team, and we have neglected this for too many years, and it's time to really start focusing on the small dollar races. And I call them small dollar races because if you're running for city council in a small town like Lake Angeles, you can send out 4 pieces of mail to every local voter in your district that votes in a local election, and you could probably run a campaign that's fully funded and massively funded and overfunded for $4,000. So a little bit of money goes a long way in a local race. So I ask you to think about that, and we would love to help you get that done. Next, any questions?
No, just take the 20.
Nope? Okay, great. Next is the treasurer's report. Bill?
Hello, everyone.
Anybody buy 20?
My name is Phil Reed. For those of you who don't know me, thank you for coming. I'll make this report short. We have about 5 accounts that we keep money in, and we have, it's kind of a good news, bad news report. The good news is we are flush with soft money. Soft money is not reported to the FTC. Soft money can't be used for things like rent or salary or certain fixed expenses. And in that area, we have about $90,000 in soft money that isn't allocated towards bills. And that money comes basically from our bingo charity game tickets. SDP runs 5 bingo games at this hall called 3 Acres on Mott Road near 13 Mile. So if there's any bingo fans in the hall, please go and support our games there. So but the hard money that I mentioned earlier is used for things like rent and salaries. We have about $9,200 in the account. And in the summer months, bingo takes a downturn, and this year has been a little softer in other than last year, for example. But we're just struggling by. And the county party makes money in 3 basic ways. Through membership, through our Phil Hart dinner, and through our ongoing bingo operations. So if any of you are not currently a member of the Oakland County Democratic Party, I strongly urge you to join. We have membership forms in the back. And if you are a member and you're wondering when does my membership come due, just assume it's due now and renew your membership and help us with our hard money thing. So like I said, we're kind of flush with soft money that we can't use for many things, and the things that we really need to spend money on, like I said, rent and salaries, we are a little running very short right now. So beyond that, we have, like I said, we use our bingo for to raise money, and some of that goes to soft, some goes to hard. We've had, this year we picked up a new report analyst who has challenged us on our reports for things. And mainly, number one issue is when people go to play a bingo game, it's kind of hard to we don't necessarily think about it this way, but going to a bingo game, like for Oakland County or Macomb County, Democratic Party, is just, as far as the FEC is concerned, it would be just like going to a Debbie Stabenow fundraiser. They want to know who you are, where you live, who you work for, and what your occupation is. And we always have trouble getting bingo players to provide who they work for and what their occupation is. And at least half of them, maybe more, are retired, but not all of them are. And it's always this ongoing struggle. So that's been our issue with our new report analysis, and who's keeping us on the straight and narrow. But we have no issues with the FEC at all at this point in time. And like I said, short of being a little tight on our hard money, we're doing just fine in that regard. Any questions? Yes, I'm very.
Is there a plan for what to do with this $90,000 in soft money?
I will defer that question to the chair. You want to take that question right now?
Sure.
All right.
In the budget, you've approved $10,000 going to local clubs for assistance. You approved $10,000 for building up membership and other things. So we have some plans for that. We can use the money to hold town halls and to do community outreach and to do political outreach. So we will be having a town hall on healthcare coming up soon in September. We're going to be working with the environmental community to have environmental town halls as well. And while that doesn't sound all that exciting, it really helps our candidates who are running for state rep and state senate have a platform to speak at. So there is some really good stuff that we do with that money. So we call it soft money. I like to call it an issues fund. It sounds nicer. So we have issues money that we have no issues with. And it also goes to do to help with some legal bills for fighting the straight party ticket voting. And don't forget, we still have that ongoing. While we were allowed to vote straight party ticket in the last election, we are still going to court to preserve that right, because as the law stands, we will have straight party ticket voting eliminated under the law if we can't win in court. And we also are having some lawsuits filed to deal with the gerrymandering of our congressional district. So we do have some fights underway with that. So that's how we spend that money.
Thank you.
On behalf of our Democrats.
Any other questions? Yes.
I wonder, do we have a fundraising committee?
I've also deferred that question to the chair.
We are in the process of getting a speaker for the Phil Hart Dinner, which will be some Sunday in October. And hopefully I'll be able to tell you who that is soon. I was hoping I could tell you today, but it didn't work out that way. But we are actively working with a prospect. A nice guy.
If you wanted to be in the committee, who would you?
But once we get the speaker, we will ramp up because we will have a fundraising committee at that point for the Phil Hart, and then that committee will morph into a general fundraising committee. In the meantime, Phil did talk about memberships. We have a great deal going now. For the 100 Club, it costs you $120. Inflation. But you can pay it out in monthly installments of $10. So it doesn't even feel like you're paying, because it's less than 2 Starbucks coffees a month. So we're really excited about that. So if you would like to help us out and be a 100 Club member, you do get some perks with that. No pun intended on the coffee thing. But, and that's a great way to help us out. Or you can be a 300 Club member. That does cost $300, but you can pay that out in installments as well. Or you can just be a basic member and give us your money tonight, and we'll be very happy with you. Thank you.
All right. But if you want to be in the fundraising committee, Amanda is at the back at the table. She was signing you in. Please see Amanda tonight or call her on the phone at our OCDP office. The number's, of course, on our website, ocdp.org. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
I need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Okay, moved by Murray Garcho, seconded by Ken Douglas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, moving on. Next is the old business, and we're going to kind of wrap old business stuff that we've been doing into the reports of new business. So as we move into new business, I do want to change that around a little bit, because before we bring up Amanda, we are blessed with some great candidates that are running for Congress. We have some great candidates that are running up and down the line, because I know that Julia's here, and we have Rosemary, who's going to be running for, we have 2 Senate candidates here. So I'm really excited about that. But we have a dynamite candidate who grew up in a small farm, who worked for the State Department for a few years. And I'm sure she'd love to take a question tonight about North Korea, if you have one. So I'm going to bring up Elissa Slotkin, who's running for Bishop's seat. So we need her in the 8th Congressional District.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thanks for having me speak. Am I the only one who gets a little freaked out when we talk about Democratic politics and bingo? I'm sorry, I'm still not over it. We're good. I'm still not over it. My name is Elissa Slotkin. I am running for Congress in the 8th District against Mike Bishop. And I think folks may have seen there's another woman, Darlene Dominic, who's also in the race. Just for a quick reference, all of the candidates who are even considering running in the 8th District, we have all gotten together and had coffee or had a drink, and we have sort of made a pact that no matter what happens, no matter what we're going to discuss, on the trail, on the campaign, that we're all good Dems just trying to do the right thing, and so we're not going to do kind of the circular firing squad shooting at each other. We're going to keep our focus on turning this seat from red to blue. So just as an FYI, but just a a couple of things about me. I am a 3rd-generation Michigander. I grew up in Holly, Michigan, down the road from here, so know this area well. I have played bocce over at the court here a couple of times. We grew up on a family farm. It was a beef cattle farm. My family was in the meat business. For those of you who have grown up around here, you may know High Grade Foods, which was headquartered downtown since 1949. And when we put the headquarters downtown, my grandfather decided, as the son of an immigrant, the best thing you could do as an American is have a farm. And so he came in the 50s and early 50s and bought a farm in Holly. So that's where I'm from. How does someone who grew up around here go ahead and end up working for the CIA, working at the Pentagon, working at the White House under George Bush and under Barack Obama? For me, the story is very deeply connected to 9/11. I was in New York City on my 2nd day of graduate school at Columbia when 9/11 happened in the city. We all remember where we were when we heard that 9/11 happened. And for me, it was running with a bunch of students to the hospitals to donate blood. It was figuring out which students were going to sleep on our floor since they couldn't get home over the bridges and through the tunnels. And after all the chaos of that first crazy day ended, I really decided that I was going to commit myself and my career to national service. So within a year, I was recruited by the CIA to be a Middle East analyst. And within a year of that, I was trained and deployed to Iraq to work alongside our military. I served 3 tours in Iraq. On the 3rd one, I met my husband. He's a career Army officer. Did 30 years as an Apache pilot, served all over the world. He's still a counterterrorism planner, 4 days a week at the Pentagon. In between all those tours, I was all over the place in Washington. I was in intelligence jobs. Like I said, I worked at the White House. In the last 5 years, I was at the Pentagon. I was an Assistant Secretary of Defense, which means I advise the Secretary of Defense on the Middle East, Russia, Europe, and Africa. So not North Korea, but I'm happy to talk about it, given some of the comments that were made today. I will tell you that my motivation for running really comes deeply from my sense that Congress and Washington in general has forgotten that they are public servants first. That concept, that very basic idea that the one job you have is to make the lives of your constituents better. The one thing you're supposed to be doing is listening to the people that you represent and making their lives better. That has been, I think, largely forgotten. Sometimes on both sides of the aisle. So as someone who comes from a national service family, my stepdaughter is a brand new Army officer with the 101st, my brand new son-in-law is an Army officer, my father-in-law is an Air Force officer. This just sticks in my throat, what's going on. And the tenor of the conversation in Washington has, I would say, gotten so bitter that we're in sort of pure dysfunction. At least that's how I see it. And that pains me. Because the U.S. Congress was established in the first article of the Constitution. I believe in it as an institution, just not the people who are currently in it. So, I was thinking about running. My husband and I went ahead and started exploring what that looked like, and I looked at who my representative was. To be honest with you, I think most of you know Mike Rogers, the guy who preceded Representative Bishop. Mike Rogers was the head of the Intel Committee in Washington, so I had the opportunity to brief him many times as a young CIA officer. And I will tell you, whatever you thought about Mike Rogers and his views, he was a strong presence on Capitol Hill. He was a strong presence back here in the district. He was, in my mind, working to hear from his constituents. And unfortunately, our current representative, I cannot say the same thing. Particularly that part about coming back and talking to people in the district. So my husband and I were thinking about it, and I want to be honest, I would not have run against Mike Rogers. Wouldn't have done it, right? So my husband and I kept looking at this and learning more about Representative Bishop. And the thing that really is crazy about running for office is the money that's required. I've started talking about this more and more because it just kind of blew my mind. To understand that based on how campaign finance has changed, Representative Bishop and the Republican Party spent $2.5 million to win this seat in 2016. And you know that we switched candidates, so we had $2.5 million is the floor of what he was willing to spend. That's crazy. That's crazy. So my husband and I were really struggling with, are we going to really do this? Because raising that kind of money is a serious endeavor. And my husband kept asking me, why do you want to be a part of a body that has the lowest approval rating of any single institution in the country? Because I believe it is ours to save. That's why. So we're hemming and hawing about it, and May comes along, and Mike Bishop votes for the health care bill. And that one just got to me. I think the thing with healthcare is everyone has a personal story. Everyone has something in their family, in their friends that just is related to healthcare and affordability. And for me, it was my mother. My mother died of ovarian cancer in 2011. We had struggled for many years before to get her health insurance. She had had breast cancer when I was a little girl, so she had what we call a precondition now. We didn't call it that. But we couldn't get her health insurance that she could afford for, I think, 6 years. She went without health insurance. So without the regular doctor's appointments, without the checkups. And finally, in 2007, we said, it's enough, we got to get you health insurance. My brother and I were now into our careers, we could afford to help her. And we found her a health insurance plan for $1,000 a month. It was her highest bill, higher than her rent, higher than her car payment, higher than anything else she had in her budget, her monthly budget. And in the summer of 2009, completely unbeknownst to us, she let it lapse. She paid for something else. We still don't know. And in September of 2009, she was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. So that moment of realizing that your mother has terminal cancer, that moment when your life kind of cracks open and you realize you're in a completely different world, That's the moment we're in the hospital with her and they have her on the MRI machine and they will not put her into the machine until we write an $8,000 check. And then they will not give her the emergency blood test that they desperately say she needs without a $13,000 check. And they will not do the extra special x-rays that they say they need unless you write a $6,000 check. I am not a poor person. My brother and I both work, but we went a month like that, tens of thousands of dollars. And by a complete loophole, we got her back on insurance. If we had not gotten her back on insurance after a month, it would have bankrupted us. And I am not a poor person. So when Mike Bishop went ahead and voted for that health care bill without talking to anyone, it just got to me. Because a town hall is not something, there are people who want a town hall so they can yell at him. But from my experience in this district, talking to people everywhere, every corner of this district, people want that basic human validation that what they're going through is difficult and they want help understanding how to navigate through it. It's a very basic human connection and they're not getting it. So when he made that decision, I was in. It was the same exact week that I had happened to buy a lamp at Target. I bought a lamp for my side table. And I got it, and I got back home, and within 24 hours, I had 3 emails from Target. How did you enjoy that lamp? What was your experience in Target? Is the lamp good? I got, that feedback they must have had through my credit card. They had my email. And I realized in that same week that Target had asked me more about my lamp than my congressman had asked me about my health care. And it broke me. So on July 10th, I got into the race. Here is what I've heard as I've gone back and forth throughout the district. Number one, people feel unhappy. There is a sense of unhappiness. And they feel unhappy about 2 major things. One is jobs in the economy. I think as Midwestern Democrats, and I'm very much running as a Midwestern Democrat, we're going to bring that concept back to the United States. Yeah, it's a different thing. And as a Midwestern Democrat, we need to be talking about the economy first and second and third and fourth. Because if people can't feel change in their pocketbook, they're not able to concentrate on the other things that we want them to focus on. So we've got to be able to speak to the issues that we're going through. We're going through generational change here in our economy. And we need to get on it. So jobs in the economy, and in particular, I hear this completely crazy mismatch between businesses, big and small, who have vacancies every single month for some of their best jobs, and then young people who don't want to work at Big B Coffee their whole lives. That is a solvable problem. What it takes is bringing people together all the way up and down the chain. Big businesses, small businesses, community colleges, universities, high schools. And figuring out what the force management looks like, workforce management. We do it in the military. If they don't have enough drone pilots, they all get together and they figure out how are we going to incentivize more drone pilots, how are we going to retrain more fixed-wing pilots, how are we going to fill that need, and they come up with a plan. That's what we need, and I would call an annual summit in the 8th District in order to do just that. The other thing I hear about all the time, obviously, is healthcare. Now, this has now been in the stratosphere, right? This has been on the newspaper and on the TV every day for months now. I was very happy where we ended up pushing back on some of the repeal and ideas of repeal and replace. A bipartisan group of doctors, of industry people, and of outside community members, people who can represent the interests of the patients, and then we discuss it like we discuss any other issue. Hearings, airing it, transparency, sunlight. We are not going to fix a generational problem with a couple of senators getting in a closed-door room and coming up with some proposal that they jam through. So I'm watching what they do. I know we all are. And in the meantime, we need to make sure that the administration doesn't try to tank the system we do have. The other issue related to healthcare that I don't feel like gets enough attention is prescription drugs. I know that you've all heard the story of the EpiPen lady. That's what I call her. She has a name, but She's the woman who runs the company that makes EpiPens, where they just spiked the price, and she had to sit in front of Congress. Does anyone know the story? Does anyone know the lady, the EpiPen lady? Okay, just making sure. So if you haven't heard about it yet, the next EpiPen is insulin. What is going on for diabetics right now, due to the couple of companies being pushed out, the doubling of the cost of insulin, you will start to hear about that. The predatory price increases that are completely legal and completely immoral must be regulated. If you're like my dad, then some people just go to Canada and they go ahead and get their drugs in Canada. If our government can't help us with affordable prices, they need to allow reimportation of drugs at Canadian prices. It's a Band-Aid, but better have a Band-Aid than something else. The other thing I hear more generally, and I mentioned it before, is people feel unheard. And I just want to take 1 second on this concept of Midwestern Democrat, because I think that it's important. I think that Democrats need to earn the vote of people in this state. And we do that by having an affirmative, forward-looking plan that leaves aside criticism of the other side as a strategy. We cannot say the other guy doesn't have the right temperament and believe that that's a strategy that's going to get people's votes. We know that it doesn't, right? We know that it doesn't work. So I will never say the president's name in my speech. I'll say the president, but I won't say the president's name because it's not about him. He distracts us and he is a source of unending frustration for many, many people, but it is not about him. It's about what we can offer people in this district and how hard we're gonna work. People feel unheard from a party that doesn't, I still think that folks in Washington still don't get. It's one thing to try to win back the Midwest, right? Because they can't win a presidential election without Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. You can't do it. So they want to win our votes, but they actually have to care. Not just care about the electoral strategy, they have to care about the generational change that's going on here. And I think I'm someone who can make that voice heard in Washington. I have testified in front of these people, I have briefed in front of these people. I know exactly how much time they think about the Midwest. It's about this much. You have to fight and demand. What I would say is the other piece of feeling unheard, as we've talked about, is our representative not getting out into the district. This is something I know people in this room, we have to keep churning on him. I know people in this room have followed him around to events and trapped him in his car, which I don't endorse. I just note it. But we have to keep demanding that. When you're an elected official, you represent the entire district regardless of who voted for you. That is a basic requirement of the job. And I think it is incumbent on us to just forge a new path for the party, right? Whatever we've been doing hasn't been working, and we need to own that and move on. Now, I was trained in the national security world. I was trained being deployed to Iraq. Has anyone, and let me just see, any military in the audience here? Former military? Okay. When you served in the military, did anyone ever ask you if you were Democrat or Republican? Ever once? I was deployed 3 times, and I never once got the question. Because when you're focused on a mission, people don't care about that stuff. They just want to get work done. And that, I believe, is the spirit that we need to bring to what we're trying to do here in this district. I just don't believe that strict, angry vitriol that's present in Washington right now is how Michiganders were raised. It's not how I was raised, right? My parents were Republican, my brothers and I, who knows? I mean, it was a mishmash. I think the way I was raised, and I know we were more likely to fight Michigan versus Michigan State than we were Democrat and Republican, right? It was kind of like some families like blinds and some like curtains. If there's a good idea, I am happy to work across partisan lines to get something done. The important thing is whether it improves the lives of people on the ground. That is the one judge. And I know that's controversial sometimes, but I really believe that, and I was trained in that environment. I work for Democrats, I work for Republicans. So, pardon? Oh, questions, sorry. Vicki is pushing me along. Thank you for listening.
grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
Have you thought yet, this week in the news, all we hear about is that the Democratic Party is bi-coastal. Have you thought about how we're going to win back farmers all over the country?
Yeah. Coincidentally, there's a farm bill up in 2018, so it's a big year for farmers, and I've been talking to the Farm Bureau and a bunch of dairy farmers in particular about this. I think my experience has been that if you go, I talk to Republican voters and independent voters every single day, and I still believe that Michigan is a place where personality and the person does matter. People split their ticket, even in this district, all the time. And I believe that if you can show people what you will do for them, then they will vote for you. Debbie Stabenow in this district mastered that, right? She's the chair of the Ag Committee, or minority chair of the Ag Committee. She knew exactly how to do that. So I'm taking a page out of her playbook and spending a lot of time talking to the farmers about what they want out of the Farm Bill, excuse me, and in particular, how they're viewing the renegotiation of NAFTA, right? There's lots of people who love renegotiating. There's a lot of people who are a little worried about it, right? So for me, it starts by going to their farms, talking to the Farm Bureau, and just trying to hear what they need and fit it into the platform. It's the second biggest driver of jobs in this district. So,
okay, so playing off your Target story,
yes.
I went to your, please take this as constructive criticism. I went to your website, I watched your video,
Yeah.
I listened to your interview with Patrick Michael Shields,
Yeah.
and I went to your website and it said, I'm listening, and I don't know, whatever it says.
Yeah.
You wanted to hear from people,
Yeah.
you know, what they thought. So I wrote you a long email, or I filled in your form,
Yeah.
and I haven't heard anything back. So
Yeah.
I don't feel like you're listening to me yet.
Yeah. So we've done two things. Number one, we put a button right on the website, which I think what you're talking about, where you fill out a form. The second thing is I don't know if you're on the mailing list, but I sent out another big email saying, please take the survey. So we have an email teed up for later this week that summarizes what we heard from people. It's actually very interesting. It is jobs in the economy. It is healthcare. The big third one, I must say, was campaign finance reform. Now, I don't know, it's not a scientific survey, but the number of people who were furious with Citizens United and what it's done to make unlimited money available in campaigns was huge. So the answer to your question is, you're right, I haven't responded individually to all of those surveys. That, frankly, was going to be hard for me. But we are amalgamating it and trying to respond to people with, number one, what the big issues were and what my policies are to deal with those issues.
It wasn't the survey though. You have a thing where you can fill out
Your big issues?
a narrative. No, this is
Yeah.
here, we can just write it like an email.
Yeah?
Okay, all right, so that's what you're doing with those, is you're just taking the issues.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if there's something specific, we can talk about it afterwards that you want me to respond to, then we will do that. But my staff is literally sifting through them now to try and see what patterns came up when you talk to a large group of people in this district.
Okay, so the suggestion, if that's what you're doing with
Yeah.
it, you should put that on your website and say, this is what we're doing with your emails.
Okay.
And you will be receiving a response in the next
Okay.
period of time.
I got it.
So that people do feel heard,
I got it.
that you're not just ignoring, taking
I hear
the floor
you.
and ignoring.
I hear you. I got it. Sir.
Ms. Slotkin, what is your energy policy?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I would say for Michigan, it's basically like everything, not so simple, right? For Michigan, given the manufacturing that we have here, given the role in the economy, that things based on the oil and gas economy depend, this is not a place where we can try and transition 100% to alternative energy. That said, we are quickly becoming a leader in the United States for alternative energies. They're a huge driver of jobs, by the way, and it's a wonderful thing. So for me, it's finding the right balance between the obvious environmental advantages of getting off of fossil fuels and the obvious needs for particularly some of our plants, to have fossil fuel-led energy or driven energy as a dependency matter. So I think that's as close as I've gotten to an energy policy. I'm happy to talk to you more about it, but it's basically, we can't ignore one or the other sector. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much. I'll get back.
Thank you. Yeah, I was not real subtle in transitioning here. We have two great speakers on our agenda, and I know I'm very grateful that Dr. Abdul El Said did I pronounce it correct? Good. Is here also, and I know a lot of you want to hear him, and he's got a lot of places he's got to be because there is a primary election today in Detroit and in a few other places like Pontiac, and I know he's got to get out of here. So come on up and welcome to the Oakland County Democratic Party. We're really glad you're here.
All right, good evening. Good evening. Well, I'm really thankful to be here. It was a privilege and honor to hear Elissa speak, and where'd she go? There she is. Good luck to you. We'll talk afterwards. Really great job. Sorry about that, I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's an honor and a privilege to speak alongside her. I'm really thankful that you're taking this on. So more power to you, and I look forward to catching up. Thank you. It's an honor also to be hosted by Oakland County Democrats. I want to talk a little bit about my run, about this race in particular, and then open up for questions. I think in this moment right now, there's a lot that we need to come together around, and I'm excited that this was an opportunity to share a stage with somebody who is rallying in DC around what it is that we can do together. So I often ask a couple questions before I get started, and I just want to take the temperature of the room. So who here believes that we need people over profits? All right. And who here believes in democracy over dynasty? Okay. And who here believes that we need new blood in places like Lansing and DC? All right. So there's got to be Oakland County Dems here. I come from a wholly uncommon, if entirely American family. My father, he immigrated from Alexandria, Egypt in 1978. He was the oldest of 6, born to a vegetable salesman and an illiterate homemaker. They raised 6 kids on the top floor, 1-bedroom apartment of a building overlooking the fish market in Alexandria where my grandfather sold vegetables. And my dad knew that if he was going to have a life that looked any different than the one that his father led, that he was literally going to have to do it by the book. And so his days would have him going to school in the mornings, and then going to help with the chores in the market, and then going to study by the light of a lamp on the roof of the building, a lamp that was across the street. He would actually study right next to the chicken coops. When I was a child, I used to spend some time playing with my cousins in that same place where my dad would study. And he graduated in his senior year as the top student in his engineering class at Alexandria University. And he had the opportunity to do a PhD in one of 2 places. He was either going to be Bayreuth, Germany, or Detroit, Michigan. And my dad was somebody, after all, who did his homework. And when he did his homework, he learned about a Detroit that was in Michigan, in the United States of America. In a place where it didn't matter the color of his skin, it didn't matter the native tongue that he brought with him, it didn't matter how he prayed, but that this America was big enough for everyone. And my dad took a bet on America, and an America that was big enough for him too when he moved here in 1978. As a boy who was born and raised in a fish market, right, he came to study at Wayne State University. Where do you think he lived? Where do you think he lived? Eastern Market, right? And he found he could buy the same spices and the same fruits and vegetables and the same meats that his mother used to cook for him and the family, and he felt just as at home 5,000 miles away. And he finished his PhD, and he went home one summer where he met my mother. She was a physician who was training, working on issues of female genital mutilation, which is unfortunately too common in some of the outskirts of Egyptian cities, and she was working to educate folks to end that. He met her, they got married in a month, and they moved back to the United States, right? And you can imagine when they got there, right, there's sort of a bit of a shotgun wedding. They realized they only really had 2 things in common. The first was that they were 2 of the only Egyptian people that they knew. And the second was that they had just conceived a child, who was me. And so you can imagine what happened. As they say, the band broke up, and I became a bit of a one-hit wonder. They both got remarried. My mom, she remarried a gentleman who was working as a translator back in the Middle East. And my father, he married a woman from a place called Gratiot County, Michigan. Anybody know about Gratiot County? All right, so it's home to places like Alma or St. Louis. If you don't know where it is, it's just here. 30 miles.
Wind farms there.
Yep, big wind farms there. 30 miles north of Lansing if you drive up 127. And so the house that I grew up in, right? My mom, Jackie, who my father married, my stepmom, she's a certifiable daughter of the Revolution. Her family's been here since before the Revolutionary War. Their family's been in Gratiot County for generations as small business owners and farmers and teachers. And so the house that I grew up in was the house built by Muhammad and Jackie, right? And to give you a sense of that household, I want to invite you into my home on that most American of holidays, which is Thanksgiving, right? You've got the traditional turkey. You've got the Lions losing on TV. And then you've got my family, right? You already met my father, Muhammad, who is a professor of engineering, and he's also a part-time imam. He leads prayers in various mosques in Southeast Michigan. You've got my grandma, Judy, who was born and raised in Flint. She is a nurse who trained at Hurley Hospital up there. And she's a deacon at her Presbyterian church. And then you've got the wild card in my family, who's my Uncle Pio. Uncle Pio grew up in what was then the USSR, what is now Poland. And he teaches Slavic languages at the University of Michigan. He's also an avowed atheist, right? So you can imagine Muslim Muhammad, Presbyterian Judy, and atheist Pio, and all of us are wondering why the Lions keep losing on Thanksgiving. But in all reality, do you think that my family agrees on everything? No. No family agrees on everything, right? Not only that, but these are people who come from fundamentally different walks of life. They have seen different paths for themselves, but those paths all led to one moment. And they have built for themselves a family, a sense of a shared future that is far greater than any of the differences that they may have between them. And that shared future, it's manifested in people. People like me, my brother, who's unfortunately named Osama, my sister Semia, or my cousins Zora and Dara, who if you put us all in a room and say, yeah, these people are cousins, you confuse a lot of people. But it's the family that they built together. And it's the family that brings them together year in and year out to share the turkey and watch the Lions lose. But I'll tell you, I grew up in this family, and I grew up watching these people come together year in and year out. And it taught me a lot of things about myself. First and foremost, I realized that I love people. I loved understanding who they are and what has brought them to the paths that they tread. My summers would have me getting on an airplane, going out to Alexandria at the beginning of the summers, where I'd hang out with my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. And then I'd come home all the way back to Gratiot County or Montcalm County, where I'd spend the rest of my summer with my other grandparents, my other aunts and uncles, and my cousins. And these two groups of people could not have imagined the lives that one another lead. And yet, they were lives that I got to traverse throughout my childhood. I also realized I love science. Both of my parents are engineers, and so science was just the language that we spoke in our house. And so I thought growing up that I wanted to use science to help people, and that I was going to grow up and I was going to be a doctor. I went off to the University of Michigan as an undergraduate, and I studied biology and politics. Now you can imagine, I'm coming home after that first term at the university. My dad's asking me, so what do you think? Like, what do you want to study? And I said, Bubba, I think I want to study biology and politics. And he just looks at me for a minute, he's like, oh, very, very confused. These things aren't as different, though, as they otherwise might seem, right? Because if biology is the set of rules by which our cells make complex decisions about scarce resources in our bodies, politics is the set of rules by which our communities make complex decisions about scarce resources in society. And actually, if you want to understand why people get sick, we pay a lot of attention to the biology, but it actually has a lot more to do with the politics. We drove here today from Detroit. We drove about 45 minutes. We also drove about 10 years difference in life expectancy. And that has nothing to do with differences in biology between Oakland County and Detroit. It has everything to do with differences in politics. Differences in access to a basic set of things. A good job that pays a living wage, that puts a good roof over your head, that puts good food on your table, that puts clean air in your lungs, that puts clean water in your cup, that allows you to walk your community without being victimized by either your neighbors or the police themselves. Those basic things are what differentiate life expectancy between here and Detroit. And so as I progressed through my training, I did a PhD in public health, and I finished medical school, and I realized that for me, the work that I wanted to do had everything to do with the politics of health rather than the biology of health. And so I dedicated my career to public health. After spending a couple of years as a professor studying health disparities, I had the opportunity to come home. I was named health commissioner in the city of Detroit at 30 years old. I was the youngest health commissioner in any major U.S. city, and I also had what was probably one of the hardest jobs in local public health. See, the health department that I walked into had been shut down in 2012 when the city of Detroit was facing bankruptcy and state takeover. Remember, we talked about the politics of health. And in that moment, they made the decision to shut down a 185-year-old health department. This in a city with a higher infant mortality rate than Mexico's. In a city where our children have triple the likelihood of being hospitalized for an asthma exacerbation than the rest of the state. And quadruple the likelihood of being exposed to lead before their second birthday than in the rest of the country. They shut down their health department. I was hired to rebuild that health department. I walked into a department of 5 city employees, 85 contractors. We were in the back of the building where people go to pay their parking tickets. In fact, on my first day at work, right, I knew I was a little bit young for the job, and I looked the part. I got my big boy suit on, right? I'm walking in, you're the commissioner, you're going to commission, it's going to be fantastic. And this gentleman walks up to me from the right, he's like, hey, you work here? And I look at him for a minute, I was like, you're the commissioner. Yes, I do work here. He's like, great, can you take my parking ticket in for me? I was like, no, I'm the health director. He's like, yeah, I know, but why are you walking into the parking building? I was like, just give me the ticket. So after paying his ticket, we got to work. And I have to tell you, for those first couple of weeks, I was lost. Where do you start? Our job is to provide basic public health goods and services for 700,000 of some of the most vulnerable people in the entire country in post-bankruptcy Detroit. But on my 3rd week of work, I got to meet a little boy. And this boy taught me a lot about both the work of public health and the work of government. What it is that we are supposed to do if and when we sign up to serve the public. He was a 3-year-old little boy. He was the 4th child of a 21-year-old mom. He probably met his father maybe 4 times in his life. It's because his dad's in jail. And when I was introduced to him, he did something very peculiar for a 3-year-old. I don't know how many of you have ever been introduced to a 3-year-old, you don't know. But usually they do one of 2 things. They will either bury their face inside of their mother, or they might give you a hand, but they also kind of give you side eye. What are you going to do with my hand? This boy did neither of those things. He just walked up to me, gave me a big hug, and then walked back to his mother. And I thought about the kind of confidence that a child of that age has to have to be able to hug some random dude they never met before. And I thought about that in contrast to the life circumstances that this boy faces. We talked about some of the public health challenges that he faces, but even if this boy makes it through his decrepit public school system, the probability of going to jail remains higher than the probability of going to college. And I realized that our work had to be about justifying the confidence that any child ought to be able to have in the future that they have in front of them. And so we built our department around the well-being of kids. We built it to break down the barriers that children had to being able to learn and earn like any child should anywhere. That led us to doing things like building a program to give every single child in the city access to a pair of glasses delivered for free at school so kids could see the blackboard. Because we found that 30% of our kids wouldn't get a pair of glasses even if we knew they needed them. We stood up to some of the biggest corporate polluters in our state. When a Marathon Petroleum refinery on 75, when they wanted to increase their emissions of sulfur dioxide, a known cause of cancer and asthma, we stood up to them. We organized the community. We forced them to invest $10 million of their own money to reduce their emissions overall. And then we heard about Flint. And we realized that it was possible that our kids in Detroit could be exposed to lead in a single place where we systematically concentrate them most of the day and most of the year. And that's in their schools. And so we put together a protocol to have every single school, daycare, and Head Start tested for lead in the water. We tested 360 schools in 6 months. We were the first city nationwide to test all of its schools, and the protocol that we created is now model practice nationwide for the National Association of City and County Health Officials. But I'll tell you, I had to ask myself in that moment, what is my responsibility? I was rebuilding a health department that had been shut down when our city was facing emergency management, while I was watching as the same emergency managers were poisoning the same kinds of kids I was trying to protect in Detroit up in Flint. What is my responsibility? And I thought about this system of government as business that has been pushed under this administration. They cut costs, cut corners, and poison 9,000 kids in one of the most vulnerable cities in America. But it's not just public health that has suffered. It's also the fact that I went to public schools my whole life. And when I graduated from my public school, just a couple miles away from here, we were in the top 10 nationwide in terms of educational achievement as a state. Today, we we are number 50 out of 50 when it comes to educational improvement over the past 8 years. And it's not just public health, it's not just public education. It's the fact that we as a state sit on 21% of the world's fresh water. And yet we're told that we can either have our environment or we can have our jobs, but we can't have both. Even though we are watching, as in China, they are building the future of renewable energies, building jobs, building infrastructure, and breaking their dependence on a system of oil that ultimately poisons us. And they tell us that they are doing this in the name of building our economy. They point to unemployment rates that have never been lower. Even though when we look at labor participation, we realize that they've never been lower either. People have been fundamentally frozen out of the economy. They cannot find a job, so they have stopped looking. Anecdotally, I graduated from the University of Michigan in 2007. Anybody who graduated with me who was a Michigan resident had their education subsidized by we, the taxpayer. And you know where they are? They're not in Michigan. There are places like Chicago, LA, New York, DC. They are building the futures of those economies because they don't even believe that our economy has a future. When I call them up and I say, hey guys, what would it take for you to come back? They say, come on, there's nothing for me there. And so we have this moment where we have failed public health, we have failed public education, we have failed the environment, and we're not even building the kind of economy that is sustainable and long-lasting. And I ask myself in this moment, what is my responsibility? What is it that somebody does in a moment like this? We can't, in fact, get beyond this culture of fear. We can't, in fact, see eye to eye with people who see the world differently than we do. We can't, in fact, come together around a set of challenges that we all face. But this movement needs leadership. Now, I know I'm probably an unlikely leader for this kind of movement. As a lot of people have told me, you know, Abdul, you're relatively young. You're also relatively brown and relatively Muslim. And so I'll push back and I'll say, yeah, I get those things. I'm also a doctor in a state that has faced the single greatest man-made public health disaster in recent memory. I'm also an educator in a state that has a fundamentally failing public school system. I'm also a public servant in a state that is among the least transparent and least accountable in the entire country. I'm also a young person in a state that has failed to create economic opportunities for young people. I also know this. In my public school, where I got to have a great education, I learned about a society that was founded on a set of ideas, among which is that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal. My dad took a bet on that when he moved here back in the 70s. I also learned about my Constitution. And my Constitution tells me that there shall be no religious test to leadership. I also played sports. I was the captain of my football team, my wrestling team, and my lacrosse team growing up. And I learned that when your team needs you to stand up, you stand up. And so I am standing up. And I'm standing up because I believe in us. I believe in what we can do if we are willing to unify around the set of challenges that we face. That we are willing to unify around an economy that does not lock people out, but is inclusive and sustainable. We are willing to unify around the purpose of rebuilding our schools, around protecting our Great Lakes and our environment, around providing access to basic healthcare needs for people in our state, around the idea that our politics don't in fact have to be broken if we are willing to see the humanity in somebody who may see things differently than we do. And I believe in our ability to come together because I have watched year in and year out as my family, people who come from places as diverse as Alexandria, Egypt, and Warsaw, Poland, have come together around something that is bigger than any of them, and that is a sense of a shared future. Thank you.
He would love questions, so come on up.
See the young lady in the back.
I think you just won my heart. All you have to do is go around and just talk like you did tonight, and you will win this whole state. The biggest problem is if it's a new playing field, it's not going to be an easy playing field, and we know that. How do we protect you and you to create this new playing field? Even how do we prevent gerrymandering or respond to gerrymandering as happened? I think we need to do that to help you guys win. That's Harvard's job.
Thank you. What's your name?
Harvard.
Margot? Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me that you'd say that. I'll tell you this. Right now, so on the substantive part of your point, there is a really, I think, really meaningful initiative right now where a group that has come together beyond party to articulate a future for us that is not gerrymandered, where all of our elections actually matter. They've come together to try and put a ballot initiative on the ballot. They need 315,000 signatures. If you have not heard of them, please go to countmyvote.org. My is M-I, as in Michigan, Count My Vote. And please do get involved, because gerrymandering is a huge threat to not just a particular election, but the future of our democracy. When people don't believe that elections matter because most of the differentiation happens in the primary, it hurts us all. Every election needs to matter. And then I think the things that you can do are to get the word out, to go out and engage folks. Now, I'll be honest, I make no bones about the fact that I have some, we'll just call them demographic challenges that I will have to ascend beyond. I am young, brown, and Muslim. And I think that in a lot of minds, that has been reason to assume that is in fact impossible to elect somebody who is of my demographic to an office like this. But I'll tell you what, I'm really lucky, because I was 23 years old when a gentleman by the name of Barack Hussein Obama was elected President of the United States. And and I'll say that before he was elected, people said the same thing. I was just recently going back and listening to some of his best speeches, just as motivation. And in 2004, who remembers his 2004 DNC speech? It was one of the best speeches I think any of us have ever heard. I remember watching, we were watching C-SPAN. My parents had turned it on, DNC was happening. And I just remember, I had never seen my dad ever just stop what he was doing and look at a television that way before. All of us were just mesmerized. And he has a line in that speech, and he says, "My parents, they gave me an African name, Barack, which means blessed one, because they believed that in a tolerant America, a name was no barrier to success." And I do hope that we live in a tolerant America.
One of the silent issues in the state of Michigan is the privatization of mental health. That's something that's happening right now, and it's not talked about in the news. With your medical background and with your political background, I want to know what you would do as governor to protect mental health coverage for residents.
Yeah. So one of the nice things about my candidacy is that if I'm elected, you guys get a twofer. My wife is both far smarter and way better than me. But far smarter, in particular on these issues than I am. She's a mental health doctor. She has a master's in social policy as well. And one of the things that I think she would definitely lead us on is rethinking how we think about mental health in this state. And I'll give you a few basic points on how I think we need to think about that. Number one, we have to resist the corporate takeover, right? There are a lot of health insurers who cannot wait to sink their teeth into another pot of money that they will use to profiteer from. And I personally think it's immoral and inappropriate to allow another industry to profiteer off of people who are ill. And toward that end, I would just say we all have to watch out where a lot of those insurers are investing in terms of this election and who's taking money from them. Because you just follow the money when you want to know where things are happening in politics. I'm not taking any corporate PAC donations. We've raised $1 million in individual donations because this is the real grassroots movement that all of us wish our politics could be. And so we have to resist the corporate takeover of mental health. Number two, if you go back to Himmler's time, which I think nobody wants to go back to, but let's be honest, we live in Trump's time now, so hey. But during Himmler's time, the idea was that they were going to shift mental health care out of the inpatient setting in hospitals into the outpatient setting, which makes great sense. The problem is there's also shifted money. And so when they shut down the inpatient psychiatric units, they did not build the outpatient setting. So we actually have to think about how we're going to invest in community mental health infrastructure in a real way. Number three, one of the biggest complicating factors of mental illness in our state is the overriding epidemic of opiate use. And we have not done what it takes to, number one, hold the House of Medicine accountable, number two, hold pharma accountable, and number three, make sure that we are providing people the means of life-saving care, particularly in rural places when You can't just leave it up to a first responder to deliver a Narcan dose, which is a life-saving anti-opiate overdose medication. We really need to be empowering friends and family members with access to these so that they can save a life too. And so that we have to address. And then the last point that I'll say is that we have not done a great job destigmatizing mental illness in this state. You will drive by, where I came from in Detroit, you will drive by a number of billboards that just really light into somebody who is suffering from a drug dependency. And that's inappropriate. And I think we have to launch a bigger conversation in this state so that it's very clear at all levels of conversation, whether it's in a family, in a community, or at the state level, that mental illness and drug use, they're diseases, like other diseases. We don't stigmatize people who have diabetes or heart disease. We have to have those conversations that way. And so those are some of the things that I think we have to do immediately. And if we can get those things done, I think we'll set us on a course where we are taking appropriate care for people who suffer from some really terrible diseases.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sir, and sir.
Actually, two questions. First one is that you made a comment a little while ago about people over profit. How do you, given the room you're in now, bring those two together to make them both positive?
So I'm going to interpret your question as being about the economy.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So he said when you talked about people over profit. In the context of where we are right now, how do you bring those two together? And when we talk about an economy in Michigan, right, most of the time we've been focusing on why Michigan's economy has not operated the way that we have wanted it to. And that's because we've been playing by 20th century script for a very, very long time. Michigan has been very, very good at a particular set of things, and we have not necessarily diversified in the ways that we need to. The reason this is such a problem is because if you look at what happened in the economy over the past 10 years, there has been an increase in corporate profits, right? And that's why elites on both sides keep saying, well, the economy's back. It's actually not, right? Because during that, we've also seen a stagnation in labor participation, right? And we've seen a drop in real wage. That means that in communities all over our state, frankly, all over our country, people are still suffering the consequences. Now, the question becomes, why is that the case? How do you explain that? You explain that because a disproportionate number of our jobs in the state have either been offshored or, more likely, automated out. Right? A machine now does a job that a human used to do. And so when we think about where our economy needs to go, we have to be diversifying into the kinds of industries where jobs are not likely or liable to be automated out. That to me is actually the question of the 21st century. What do we do in a moment where a lot of the things that we used to be able to do as jobs are now being done by machines? How do we still provide jobs? And so in Michigan, over the 4 to 8 year term, which is what I'm concerned about right now, we have to be incentivizing local small business, right? This has to be the best place anybody does small business. We have to be incentivizing growth in those sectors that are least likely to be offshored or automated. So things like construction, which you have to do in Michigan, right? And it's really hard to do with machines. Things like the knowledge economy, making sure that this is a place where people do research and development because it's the best place to do it. We have to be investing in things like artisan craft manufacturing, which you just have to do at home. And the point of it is that it is a craft product that needs to be made by hand. We have to be investing in human care, right? A lot of that human care, that's really where we've seen growth, whether that be in healthcare, whether that be in daycare, whether that be in teaching, whether it be in elderly care. These are all opportunities for growth. So we have to invest there, and in the ways that we think about tax policy as a state and partnerships as a state, we have to see unions as partners, right, rather than as opposition. And we have to be thinking about tax policy that focuses on investing locally in small businesses and in industries that are not liable to be offshore and automated. And for those tax breaks that the state has given out, where jobs have been offshored or automated, we've got to hold those corporations accountable. It's not okay for you to say you're going to create 800 jobs and then they just kind of go away, right? We're going to hold you accountable to that 800 jobs, even if they're different jobs than the ones that you intended to create in the first place. So we have to be thinking systematically about our economy, and we have to be focused in the long term, appreciating the fact that the economy is changing structurally, and Michigan has to stay in front of it, rather than keep playing by a script that was built back in the time where the threat of automation wasn't as real.
The second question I have, being Middle West, and knowing people here, you say socialism, all of a sudden scare people. How do you explain single payer insurance?
Yeah.
not being social.
Well, the way that I usually explain single payer to folks is that there is a fundamental problem that we all have when we go to a mechanic. What's that problem? It's that you don't actually know whether or not the mechanic cares about your car or cares about making a buck. Because the mechanic is both the person who tells you what's wrong and fixes it. So there's a weird misplaced incentive set there, right? That is the fundamental problem with the cost of healthcare, is that if and when there is a profit motive to be had in healthcare, right, you actually don't know whether or not a doctor is telling you for your sake or for the doctor's sake, right? And what we've created is an insurance system that allows us to address the balances and create a negotiator for doctors. The problem with that insurance system, though, is that that insurance system itself also has a profit motive. Big problem, right? And so what a single payer system basically does is it just sets the price of what healthcare looks like in the long term. That basically solves the problem with the profit motive for all of us. And most people will say, a lot of conservative folks, you know, with whom I have this conversation will say, well, what about choice? And the point that I'll say is that choice doesn't really happen in healthcare. Because at the end of the day, let's think about if I started to clutch my chest in the universal sign that I was having a heart attack, right? Do you think I'm going to stop? You guys call it an ambulance, right? I hope that you guys would. Getting back to her question about how you protect.
I'd look for the AED first.
Okay, thank you. That's smart. So after you got the AED, somebody would probably call an ambulance, right? I'm not going to say, listen, I want you to pull up Yelp. I want to look at the reviews of all the hospitals you might take me to, and I want a choice, right? And then once I got there, I also wouldn't say, dear doctor, you could either roto-rooter, right? Open heart surgery, or medically treat, right? That's basically 3 things they could do. I'm not going to say, well, I'd like a choice in that matter. I'll be like, whatever you think, get it done, right? And then when I actually stay in the hospital, I'm not going to say, listen, I would like to choose between the medications that I want to take and the ones that I don't. You know better than me. Choice is not a thing in healthcare. We think it is. But the problem is that most of us consume healthcare because we have to, not because we want to. And because we have to, we don't really have a choice in the matter. And so this notion of choice being lost, like it was buying a shirt or buying a car, which, by the way, a lot of conservatives don't want us to be able to buy whatever car, only some cars, right? It's not that way. And so we have to be thoughtful about what healthcare actually is as good, right, and how it's best allocated and how we keep our costs down. Fundamentally, if you look at Canada, which has a single-payer system, they pay 11 cents on the dollar overall on healthcare for every dollar that they spend. We pay 19. That's nearly twice as much. And that has everything to do with the profit motives that increase the cost of it. Not only that, everybody has access to the basic care they need, and they live 2 years longer on average. Who's got a better system?
So, would you take Michigan, since the ACA allows states to come up with their own systems, would you take Michigan down the path? And how would you do it in a single-payer system?
Yes, absolutely.
How?
How? So there are a number of riders in the ACA. So here's the thing. I can't predict what's going to happen between
Assuming the
now.
ACA
Yes. So assuming the ACA still exists, there are a number of riders that exist in the ACA that allow for a lot of federal pull-down in terms of spending money if you are willing to take your state down the pathway of being a universal healthcare state or potentially a single provider. The way that that would look is that you would create a very large, very capable public insurance program. What that public insurance program would do is not fundamentally supplant all other insurance programs, but it would make all other insurance programs unnecessary, right? So you could get the basic care that you need, no matter who you are in the state of Michigan via a public program. It's something akin to a Medicaid or a Medicare, right? But it's operated locally at the state level. There is funding to subsidize that out of the ACA, right? So it doesn't put all the costs of that on the Michigan taxpayer. There's also, we would also have to be thinking about how we ultimately pay for that locally as well, which I think there are means to be able to do. When you talk to anybody here, a small business owner? All right, so of the folks who raise your hand, and that's a remarkable number, by the way, thank you guys for the work that you do. How many of you provide health care for your employees? Anybody raise your hand, have that experience? Is it a really fun thing to do, or is it a huge headache? It's terrible and hugely expensive. So the reality of it is that you, in effect, pay a tax to give your employees health care, right? If I could tell you that I could bring down the cost of that health care 50%, right, would you gladly pay a tax to get that done? Yeah. Now if I told you I could pull down money from the feds to be able to pay for part of it, would you very gladly get that done? Yeah. And you would never have to worry about which plan you work or have to learn about insurance plans at all. Now, if you wanted to give your employers a little bit more in terms of insurance, it'd still be there, right? But you would know that they would have access to a high-quality healthcare program that would pay for the things that they needed, and that they could do it without you having to worry about it. Would that be good for your business? Yes. So the point that I'm making is that if we are willing to use the law as it stands, and we are willing to take advantage of that federal path down, right, we can provide every single Michigander access to a basic level of health care, right? It may not give you ACL surgery in the next 2 weeks, but if you ever are in that position like I just was, clutching my chest, you know you're going to get high quality care. And that's the way we would do it.
One more question.
I saw you.
Can I actually ask both you and Elissa? As many of you probably know, those of us who have been staunchly pro-choice activists were very, very disheartened by the decision on the trip to say that they would publicly fund and support anti-choice Democrats in their runs, thinking that this will somehow magically give them more seats. What are your feelings on this? And as people who are going to be running and supporting other candidates for other offices in your runs, would you publicly support and endorse anti-choice Democrats?
So I want to just say something about our ideals, and I'll answer your question directly in a second. But we have this sense that if we kowtow to other people who don't share the same ideals that we do, right? And we're willing to play least common denominator politics, right? That somehow we're not going to offend enough people and we're going to get a vote. This is not how the world works, right? Because at the end of the day, people make choices. As Elissa, I think, said really well, people make choices among people who at the end of the day believe in something and stand on it, right? It's not about what we are not. It's about what we are. It's about what we're articulating when it comes to solving key problems that people talk about at their dinner table. And yes, abortion is one of those issues that people talk about at their dinner table. I had the privilege to learn a lot about the process of an abortion because I was a medical student who got to sit with a young woman who's my age when I was in medical school at a Planned Parenthood clinic who was making that decision. And one of the things it very quickly disabused me of is that this is some sort of easy, abstract decision that women don't pay much attention to. That's ridiculous. Women make really, really hard choice when they decide to do this. And I'm unwilling, fundamentally, to put the state between a woman and her own choice. Right? I just don't think that's right. And I don't think it's productive. And the other frustration that I have as a former health commissioner is that I'm a pretty pragmatic guy. At the end of the day, if you really actually want to prevent abortions, then prevent unwanted pregnancies. That is the simplest way to do it. 78 cents on the dollar that's spent at a Planned Parenthood is spent helping women make decisions about how to control their fertility, right? And that, if you really are honest about it, if you really, truly don't want abortions to happen, then invest in that front end and then give women the choice on the back end because God knows they're making a hard decision themselves and they don't need you making a decision for them. So toward that end, personally, I would not endorse people who took that position. I just don't think it is a fair exertion of the state. The irony of this is I'm a Muslim guy. I'm devoutly Muslim. I value my right to make my own personal choices, and I don't want anybody telling me what choice to make. A lot of folks who want to extend the state into those kinds of decisions are trying to, in effect, break the boundary between separation of church and state, and I will not allow that, right? Because at the end of the day, my right to pray as I choose or not is the same as somebody's right to make a decision as they choose or not, independent of your religious beliefs about whether or not it's right or wrong. Right? And that is the way we have to be thinking about this issue, the way we have to be thinking about LGBTQ rights, the way we have to be thinking about a lot of these well-dressed up attempts to blur the boundary between separation between church and state that we have had in this country and that has served us for a very, very long time. So we have to play from our front foot. We have to make sure we're articulating well what we are going to do to solve people's problems rather than articulating what we're not. Right? And we have to make sure that our flag bearers, the people who we're putting up in elections in 2018, are people who have a message that is clear, that is sonorous, people can hear it, and that resounds, right? Because if we don't do that, if we try to play on our back foot, if we try and not be offensive to anybody, right? If we try to fit ourselves in this little mold, we will lose again. And at the end of the day, the reason this matters to me is because that little boy that I served in the city, a lot of the programs that we were serving are going to get cut. And the reality is, one of the big reasons I decided to run, I love my work in public health. One of the reasons that I decided to run in the first place is because I realized that the fight for him, I could not do in a place where I could not advocate about being able to provide those basic things that every person needs to have a dignified life. And that is the fight we're fighting. It's not win or lose, red or blue. It's what are we doing to build a dignified life for people? And how are we leading with our values in ways that put us ahead of conversations that seem to be really about clipping here and clipping there so that we're just good enough and that they're not going to be upset with things. No. Right? There is something about the world we want to live in that we will articulate and that we will fight on. And if we do, we will win.
Sorry, well, it's going to be hard to beat that, but I would say I feel pretty passionately that the government has no right to tell a woman what to do with her body. And I think it's like, especially for those independence-minded people, they should feel just as strongly about that, right? If you're against big government telling you what to do, then be against big government telling you what to do, men and women. Listen, I will be very honest with you. I know lots of Democrats who personally are pro-life. They personally would not make the decision. Does that mean that they would go and run on that and make that their signature issue? No, it's a very personal issue to them. Of course, they have the right to their opinion, but I think, for me, part of being a Democrat is a woman's right to choose, keeping government out of her body, and gay rights. Those are things that are have become central pillars of our party. And while I have worked bipartisan my whole life, those things I think are most deeply upheld in the Democratic Party.
God, we're lucky. I want to thank you both. You did a super job. Aren't these guys great? I don't want to hear any of you saying, we don't have a message. I think we heard very clearly two articulate candidates talking about why we're Democrats and why we need to elect them. When I'm sitting in this room tonight and I'm missing George Bush as my president, because we got crazy in here, it's scary. So, I also sometimes miss Engler because at least he had a path. And right now we've got somebody who wanders around in circles. So, thank you very much.
So I just want to end on a note. Democracy takes work. And I say this as somebody who spent a considerable amount of time in a place that is not a democracy. Growing up, my childhoods, you would see what it looked like in a place where we did not have the right to choose, the right to speak, and the right to make decisions about our society that were free and fair. And this democracy of ours, it takes work, and it's also a lot more fragile than we appreciate it to be. You guys are out doing the work. The work is showing up to rooms like this, on evenings like this, to talk about what it is that we want, to exercise our free speech, to talk about the direction we want to go, and to make thoughtful choices about who it is that we want to support for elections. And that matters. And so, for me, all I have to say is, I hope that I've inspired you to stay involved, either to get behind my candidacy, or if you just hated everything I had to say, to get behind somebody else's. But stay involved, because that is the work that we all have to keep doing. We talk a lot about Democrats, Republicans, we talk a lot about establishment progressive, but really the biggest single voting block is the apathetic, right? I just came back from primary votes in Detroit, and I'll tell you that I don't know what the turnout's going to be, but it's going to be low. And it's not to say anything about Detroit, but that unfortunately reflects a far bigger issue we have in our democracy generally. So stay involved, get on your friends to be involved, because we have to do this work, right? This thing is far too precious and far too important for us to let it go and fall to the wayside. And we know what happens when we don't stay involved. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. El-Sayed, we wanted to congratulate you and your lovely wife, Sarah, on your new baby with a pair of University of Michigan booties.
We'll wear them well. Blue. Thank you.
Thank you. God, this was great. You got that all, Bruce, right? Got 2 candidates. We were doing a Facebook Live recording, so you guys are going to be on our Facebook page, so anybody can tune in and hear these 2 great speakers. We have great candidates running all over, and we are going to have some really tough choices in some primaries. I am so grateful, and I know all of you are too, about the quality of Democrats who are showing up and are willing to put their names on the ballot and do all of this hard work. Those of us who have run before know how hard this day-to-day grind called campaigns is. And just want to thank you all very much. Those of you who have run before, all of you, so thank you very much. And we all need you to help us win. Thank God I'm not on the ballot this year, so that's really wonderful. I'd like to bring up Amanda Klein, our Executive Director, to give a real brief description of what we're doing on Project 83. It's getting a little late. We've had great conversations tonight, but Amanda's going to fill you in and then beg you to show up tomorrow.
Or any day. Yeah, real quick. Every Wednesday night out of our office in Southfield, we are doing Project 83 Canvas.